Right, we're back. We're rolling with another episode 12. What's happening today, Don?
What's up, Jazz? Yeah, no, episode 12. Looking forward to thinking and talking about MMA because we're certainly not watching any just yet.
Exactly. So we see that the UFC is pushing for a card May 9th. Looks pretty epic. The question is, do you think that it can happen May 9th? Or are we going to see a little bit of what we saw previously where closer to the time, there's indecisiveness or people aren't sure?
Yeah, I don't know. The world's changing so rapidly that it's hard to know what things are going to look like on the 9th of May in different places. And when it comes to the US, state to state is so different. So, we saw that Florida declared professional wrestling an essential service. It's food, healthcare, and professional wrestling, obviously. So
it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it makes so.
That's what happens when Vince McMahon and Dana White are writing the essential service list.
The Essential Services Act by Vince McMahon.
Yeah.
So I think maybe that's where Dana's thinking of going.
It makes sense.
Really strange to take close contact sports to probably the state in the US with the most old people.
Yeah, the snowbird state. It's where everyone goes to retire, basically.
Exactly.
But maybe he's also thinking about that Indian reserve that he mentioned in California. So that maybe that's a possibility.
Yeah, definitely could be. So I don't know if it'll happen, but I mean, he's obviously now in communication with the top honchos at ESPN and Disney who'd asked him to pull the plug on the April 18th fight. And one would think that if he's in communication with them and he's saying May 9th is a go, that they are also for the time being saying it's a go.
Yeah, that's a very good point. He's not going to make that mistake twice. So you would think he would have their backing this time around.
Yeah.
So it seems like they're keeping quite a few of the original fights, but I'm looking at this card. I'll just run through it really quickly. We've got Ferguson versus Gaethje, Henry Cejudo versus Dominic Cruz, which is a new addition, Amanda Nunes versus Felicia Spencer, Francis Ngannou versus Rosenstrike, Jeremy Stevens versus Calvin Kattar, Cerrone versus Pettis. I mean, that's an awesome fight. Greg Hardy versus De Castro, Aleksei Olenek versus Fabricio Verdum, Jacare Ronaldo Souza versus Uriah Hall, Vince Luque versus Nico Price, and Charles Rosa and Bryce Mitchell. I think Carlos Esparza and Michelle Waterson. I mean, that's a stacked card.
Serious card, yeah.
Serious
card. I mean, it's basically every fight you can get together now pushed into one card, minus the Rose Jessica Andrade fight, which I think Rose is probably still sort of mourning, and that can't happen now.
Yeah, but I mean, Dana and the UFC are just going to have such a backlog of fights that the first maybe like initial fight cards that come out are just going to be so stacked.
Yeah,
because normally they spread out those big fights.
Yeah, and it's, we've spoken about Ngannou Rosenstrike and Tony Gaethje and those epic fights. Then you add Cejudo, Dominic Cruz. I mean, those guys are, if Dominic Cruz is anything like he was 4 years ago before this run of horrible injuries, we're in for like a real treat there.
Yeah, and Donald Cerrone and Pettis, I mean, just two stand-up guys that live to, strike. I mean, that's epic. I mean, it's quite a quick turnaround for Donald, even though the fight wasn't very quick with McGregor.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, Cerrone, just the older he gets, the more he wants to fight, every second month, it seems.
Yeah, exactly. It's awesome to see.
Yeah.
And I think a sleeper fight on this card could be the Vince Luque versus Nico Price. Those guys have some very exciting fights, high level. Yeah, that could be a sleeper on that card for sure.
Yeah, so I guess, it's the same thing as when we were talking 249. It's like one of those things where there's a part of me, at least, that thinks it's not necessary for now. The fan in me wants to see some good fights. Tony's on weight already, so,
Yes, saw that. He made weight. How crazy. I mean, as they say, how many fighters would have actually done that?
Yeah, it's so funny because there's like the classic Tony Ferguson meme. Tony Ferguson's the kind of guy who blank, and you could so easily have had one of those memes being Tony Ferguson's the kind of guy who makes weight for a cancelled fight. And he is legit that kind of guy,
Yeah, I was just listening to an interview now that Ariel had with him where he was just saying, he did it for his own, for his own mental state, for his stock, for his commitment to his family, his team. I mean, it's definitely, it's a mindset to respect for sure.
Yeah, man. I mean, like if you've ever cut weight, the most weight I've cut for like a jiu-jitsu competition is like 5 kilos. And it's like stressful doing that. The kinds of cuts that these guys do, to do it when you don't have to, you've got to like have some sort of strange constitution.
For sure. And that he does.
Yeah.
I would say.
For sure.
But yeah, I think he lost something like 24 pounds in a week. He cut 24 pounds in a week. So that is crazy. And then, I'm super excited for this Rosenstrike fight. I mean, I was watching some of his highlights, even when he was in K1 and in the UFC. I mean, he hits so hard. So, and obviously so does Nagano. I mean, that is going to be just, what did you say the one time? Whoever lands first.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's what's going to happen, man. Whoever lands first wins that fight. Because these guys are not, it's not a question of putting together combinations of rocking someone and then following up with sort of efficiency.
Yeah.
It's sort of that one shot, you're done kind of striking.
Exactly. No, it's epic. Well, a little bit closer to the fight card, we can get some picks from you and from myself. But yeah, let's keep an eye on the news, see what happens, see what turn of events.
Yeah,
I'm sure Dana White will come up with a few interviews close to the time. And yeah, Don, you're telling me about a book that you just got. You're super stoked with.
Yeah, so I think I've told you before, Jazz, that one of the things I've been doing in my spare time the last year or so is looking at the history of judo and karate, the first sort of major Eastern martial arts to be practiced in South Africa, and how people taught and learned those arts during apartheid and how people were excluded. And so I've been looking at that in my spare time and like sort of have this dream of writing it up into something comprehensive. And I found out recently about this book called Choque, which is a sort of comprehensive history of Jiu-Jitsu in Brazil. This is volume 1, 1856 to 1949.
Volume 1, that looks like a hefty volume.
Yeah, it is hefty. And there's 2 follow-up volumes that go right up until 1999.
Wow.
So luckily enough, Amazon's operating in the UK. And I was able to get a hold of this for the lockdown. Just started reading it, but it's like amazing how much research this guy, Roberto Pedreira, was able to do. And right now I'm sort of at the turn of the 20th century where there's debates happening in Brazil between what kind of fighting art is the most efficient. And you've got Japanese jiu-jitsu already finding its way into Brazil, mostly through books, not really through live instructors yet. And the police are starting to teach Japanese jiu-jitsu because they say that jiu-jitsu, unlike capoeira, one of the other major arts then in Brazil and still now in Brazil, is more effective for people who aren't that athletic. The gentle art. The same way we say smaller people can use jiu-jitsu, women can use jiu-jitsu effectively. They were saying that and therefore using it in the police force in like 1900 through the first sort of decade of the 20th century. And I mean, part of that was also that capoeira was seen as like, it originated as a slave practice. And then when slavery was abolished, it was seen as like a gangster art, and was actually criminalized for a lot of the time in Brazil. People were getting arrested for even demonstrating capoeira. So I'm deep into this book. It's fascinating.
Yeah, it sounds fascinating. I think at the end of every podcast, you're going to have to give us and the audience a little snippet of inside knowledge there.
Yeah, for sure.
I'd be interested to see how the Japanese jiu-jitsu kind of found its way into Brazil and into that whole, community.
Yeah, fascinating stuff. If anyone wants and has like Amazon availability under their portion of the global lockdown, here it is again, CHOQUE.
What's
I didn't know
the
anything.
what's the
Sorry, James?
shipping weight of that book?
Yeah, bro, it's legit. I might use it for some lockdown training.
Yeah, that's would take me several months to get through.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't know anything like that existed. I think I heard about it on some podcast or something, but you heard about it first on the MMA Lockdown. So
That's my man. All right, Don, well, you can drop some knowledge at the end of every podcast for us. You can take us through the 18th century,
yeah,
decade by decade. All right, Don, that was good chatting. That was very fascinating.
yeah.
Glad I learned something new today. And yeah, we'll chat soon. We keep an eye on that card, and we'll definitely be back with another episode.
Sweet jazz. Chat soon.
Cheers.